And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to this month's live stream. We've got a couple of interesting topics to go through, and welcome, Deepo. We're sort of in the middle of summertime, which you'd think that things would be slowing down, but all of a sudden our whole team got swamped with these requests for proposal. So I think this fall there's going to be a lot of new customers who are going to be evaluating Tridion and seeing if they can move on to the platform. So on that note, just a couple of housekeeping things. In December, we've got Tridion Sites 10.2, which is going to be released. It's an interesting release. So the focus of this release thematically is around the translation management. And I know that we put a lot of effort into 10.1 with the integration into Tridion Enterprise, making it easier for content authors and translators to understand the context of the content that they're supposed to be translating. In 10.2, we're bringing in the translation queue dashboard into the new user interface, which is going to allow you to do all sorts of nice reports, etc., just making the whole management of the process much easier. And there was one special feature that a couple of our customers requested, which was to be able to create the translation jobs, but just don't send them off quite yet, like to have those translation jobs as a quasi bundle. I mean, you could always do it with bundles, but our customers wanted to just have translation jobs, which would just sit there. So that's going to be coming out. If you go to the community, you'll be able to take a look at the new Q3 roadmap. It's been published out there, and we've got the screenshots for the 10.2 release.
Nice.
So that's one thing that you can do. As well, you might notice we've got some more details around the 10.5 release, which is going to be based around AI. And Tridion Docs has got an awesome approach with AI, not only with semantic AI, but then also within Genius and being able to easily retrieve, content that lives in a knowledge graph, as well as a Copilot. We're going to be doing something
role-based access.
Sorry?
Role-based access,
role-based access.
Yeah,
well, Genius in itself has got its own roadmap for features as well. But why don't we kick things off with AI? So Deepo, as we were chatting just before the show, you were mentioning that in the EU there's this whole new level of legislation that's coming out around AI.
That's it. And well, it's the first binding AI law to be introduced worldwide, basically. So the EU AI Act came into force on the 2nd of August. So that's just a few days ago. And basically, I mean, we're not going to go into all the details in here. All you need to know is there's 4 risk tiers. Most of it applies to those who are building these AIs. However, and there's heavy penalties, up to 35 million euros or 7% of global turnover for serious breaches. However, you need to go onto artificialintelligenceact.eu and go and start parsing that, because there's also parts that will apply to you as a user. You're classed as a downstream provider if you're making that AI implementation available to your customers. And even you got to think about your staff. So as a provider, you've got to even if it's a general purpose AI, you plug it into ChatGPT or whatever, there's still aspects of the EU AI Act that apply to you. So you take a look at that and start preparing yourself. Things about AI literacy, you've got to look at ways to make sure that you train your staff, prepare them for this, and all of that is going to eventually apply to you, especially if you want to keep selling in the EU.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's interesting that even though this is EU focused for right now, I think that there's a lot of American companies and Asia companies, for that matter, that are sort of struggling with the whole governance model. And the one thing about we always lag in the US when it comes to legislation, and sometimes the easiest thing for us to do is to look at what the Europeans are doing and use that as the base model. So even in the absence of legislation here, using that as a model makes sense for a lot of US companies.
Exactly. It's coming down the line, and you might as well just use this as your blueprint to start preparing, because eventually China's going to have theirs, US is going to have theirs, every region is going to have some form or the other. And look at it as you're putting in good practice. And a lot of it actually applies as good practice to just whatever it is that you're doing anyway. It is just good sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, in order to comply, you sort of have to address the content problem sort of early on in the life cycle, and that takes time to sort of cascade. And and I would say that when people use Tridion, etc., it's a content model that is really adapted to like not repeating content, not having duplicate content, etc. But there's so many
Exactly.
repositories in companies. Like I always joke that we're just the tip of the iceberg. If you think
We're a
about
tip,
all the
an
content.
important tip of it, but we're a
Oh,
tip of
okay.
it, and
Well,
like
we're trying to make, go down a little bit further. And interestingly enough, I think that's one of the themes that we're finding is that some of our existing customers are saying, hey, we already have Tridion. We use it for our documentation. We use it for our public facing website. We use it for our mobile applications. But there's all these other repositories. Can we do something with that as well? And, I think a lot of customers are happy to retire some of the SharePoint sites, some of these other, you know,
oh yeah.
content systems that are just, well, kind of a
You
mess.
just find, I mean, I was writing an article on this, and like, just try this. Put a search term into your SharePoint and see how many documents come up, no matter how much you've tried to govern it.
Oh, totally. Totally.
You know,
It's fine. I don't always like picking on SharePoint, but really,
I
in this
it
case,
has its
it
uses.
has its uses, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, so feel free to reach out to us if you guys have any questions around AI. We've got these different ways and solutions to actually plug in AI and plug in your AI systems into the entire content lifecycle, be it with co-pilots, be it with retrieval augmented systems,
Generation.
or like a
Yeah.
chatbot, for instance. We're working on some agentic AI solutions as well. So if you might have a complicated workflow that requires like 5 different manual steps to approve something or to decide how to get it routed, well, maybe you can
Yeah.
reduce that to like three manual steps and then 2 automated steps. And I think that's
I
going
mean,
to be something that's very, very powerful.
that's it. That new term out there is the MCP. It's the modal contextual protocol.
Yep.
And basically, that's having this interpreter, because everyone's building agents left, right, and center. And you've the MCP allows you to have this universal interpreter. It's like, in Star Trek, you've got the universal
Right.
translator, and like, oh, is it Star Wars or whatever? But basically, it's basically continue building your systems, but then just point it to the server who's going to interpret it and then connect it to Tridion Docs, for example. So, I mean, I was looking at use cases. You've got your risk assessment databases, you've got your requirements databases, you've got all these different systems within the company, within an organization. And many organizations do not want to go and rely on one sole provider or one sole system for all these. And the users are different as well. So why don't you have the systems talk to each other? So with DXT, where I think we're going to come up onto DXT, but we're talking about pluggable AI insights. You're
Mhm.
able to connect to those databases and have an agent when there's like a change in one of the databases. It then shoots something off, picks up those changes, and sends a draft, and that appears in draft space in Tridion Docs.
Mhm.
So you don't have to have a human forget to send you the email that, oh, this risk assessment has changed. Basically everything, all the different agents go and look at the different places. They've got instructions as to what to do, and then either deliver a draft or tag someone and say, well, you've got to do this. And you're just connecting spaces. You're making everything, you're keeping the human in the workflow, but all these manual tasks, the mundane tasks, you get an agents to do that
Yeah.
for you, and that's where that advantage is.
Oh, absolutely. And it just blows my mind to think that to do the connections between those two systems doesn't have to be a coding developer exercise. It could be a prompt exercise. That means it actually gives those types of flows into the hands of business users, right? Business users can write
That's
prompts
it.
because it's like writing up functional specifications. If this, I want this thing to
Exactly.
happen, I need you to communicate this. So I think we're going to see a lot of things change really, really quickly in the next couple of years, just on the agent space with AI.
Yeah.
So the next topic, I guess, is the DXD and the Content Hub and
Yeah.
the omni-channel delivery, because I think this is also, another thing that's been around for a while, and certainly, on Tridion Sites has been around for a very long time. I think with Tridion Docs as well, it's really starting to get a lot more
It
steam.
is kicking off big time. And okay, so I thought of a couple of
Mhm.
examples. So your mobile banking app
Yeah,
could use DXD to fetch articles from your website, to fetch documentation from the actual document, and also promotional banners, whatever the new interest rate is, and deliver all of that to your phone,
yeah,
all without having to retype oh well, we've got an update in here, somebody's got to go and press publish.
hmm,
All of that is available through agents. Your Apple Watch app for your travel
right,
company would display personalized trip updates,
hmm,
because it's able to, one, identify who you are, but also connects to all those different systems that has already created, devised things for your personal profile, picking up a particular snippet of a user guide from Docs for your engineer who's out there. It's able to connect to both the training repository and the documentation repository,
right,
and then also then push that file that they've got to sign off on, and checklist that I've
yeah.
done that, yes, I've
Don't
done that,
forget,
and all of that. Then they've got to save it as a PDF and then post. All of that is just all connected.
yeah,
It's omni-channel integration. Your mobile and wearable apps are not hard coded with content. They consume it dynamically from the CCMS or the CMS, and you're able to just update that content without having to think the formal publication process, the formal notification, that letting everyone know that
yeah.
it's all there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's kind of fascinating when I think about like all of the different types of devices and all of the different types of content as well. And we've been talking about this for a couple of years about the blending between the sort of content that you might see in a marketing sense, or the general purpose content with the technical content. And
Yeah.
really, I'm always amazed that sometimes you go to websites and there's just always this clear division. If you go into the docs,
Hmm.
you have a completely separate site versus
Yeah.
having everything blended around the problem, where you might be talking about, okay, here's some of the features and functions and the benefits, etc., and then here's some of the specific technical information. And some of our customers who have done a blended type model have actually found that it's helped with website conversions and website traffic, because that those technical terms that appear in Tridion Docs, that's SEO gold. And
Yeah.
those long tail keywords that appears in your documentation are exactly the things that people are searching for in Google. And if they can see the results within the context of, hey, here's the actual product that will, that will service that
Do
that you're asking
exactly
about,
what you
and
want.
drive a
Yeah.
conversion. So,
That's it. Yeah. Documentation is gold. I mean, cost center. I used to be a technical writer, but basically, you're looking for a product and you've got two comparable products. Look at the documentation. Whichever one's written better, whichever
oh,
one speaks
exactly.
to you better, is probably the one that you're going to go for. And
Oh,
we're
absolutely.
talking about even just cheap consumer goods,
Right.
talking about enterprise content.
Uh-huh.
The better that help is written, the better
Right.
that the content is being
Well, yeah, I mean, think about it. If you're looking to buy a multi-million-dollar piece of machinery, um, and the website itself isn't that great and looks terrible, etc., does that really
exactly.
build credibility, or does that maybe send you off in the direction of a competitor that might have like a nicer website, is able to show information
That's
more
it.
clearly?
One
Mine
thing I
maybe.
encourage users to do is see if they use their own tech.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Do
yeah.
they use their own tech? Take a look at the docs, docs rws.com.
Yep.
We use our own tech to deliver our own documentation. It's got the AI in there.
Yep.
You've got the hexahops, you've got the trustable chat, and you want to see it work. You want people to have confidence. If Microsoft wasn't using Microsoft Word and they were using Google Docs to write their documentation, you'd know there was something wrong in there. So why don't you apply that same principle to everything else?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But
Yeah,
one
and
thing
so
actually I forgot to, like, bring up on, like, the pluggable AI insights,
yeah,
it's like, taxonomy. That's like,
mhm,
another of these big word terminology within your company. You spent so much time, building that up, and then you expecting people to go and search for it.
mhm,
Well, with, like, we built semantic AI capabilities in there that basically, as you create your topics, the AI is there proposing, like, these are the terms that correspond with what you're writing. So,
yeah,
or you can query it with just like, oh, what terms can I use here? And it's like reading through that and making those suggestions. Again, human in the loop. You're the one that finally decides whether or not to actually add that on there. And that allows you to then personalize the content that you're delivering. It's like, content recommendations. When you're booking a room, you're booking a room on this site, it knows you're booking for you and your missus,
right,
so it can look into, like, the other parts of the thing, and, like, start suggesting spa treatments.
yeah,
If you're looking at, I mentioned, like, technical documentation, your field service is there to fix a particular problem. Why not suggest other things that he could check that are like 2 weeks down the line for, like, a review? So
yeah,
while he's got the
yeah,
hood open, you might as well check the oil. You might as well check all the liquids are, like, in place, because we're going to send you back in 2 weeks, and that's like a cost. It's a
yeah.
cost to
That's
the customer, and it's a cost to the provider as well.
yeah. I mean, that's a. I love that last point because oftentimes the personalization, we think about okay, it's like this one-time personalization as opposed to okay, we've got you're on a particular track and there is a timeline and there is different points where different pieces of content are going to be applicable even after you've done your transaction on the website.
Exactly.
Um,
Dynamic. You got to make it dynamic. It's got to be delivered in real time, in context, knowing who it is that's there. I'm not going to suggest the oil change to that newbie who I just asked to go and, like, do the water change,
right.
or to go and fill up, like, the washer fluid. But if it's an experienced engineer,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I'll suggest this to him as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's funny because even the airlines, I mean, they're starting to do a lot of that, and they've been doing this for years with like the car rental stuff, but even like the small things, like you book a
Yeah.
flight to a particular region, and now at the end they've got an eSIM that they want to suggest to you.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
Yeah. I've seen
that's
those.
big
Yeah.
business right now.
That's
So there's all these new things that are coming up, and in the travel industry, there's also this specialized thought around AI driven itineraries. And that is
yeah.
where, you don't really look at the trip as just a voyage from point A to point B, in an aluminum tube, but instead there's a sort of a broader picture of like, okay, what's your whole travel experience going to be like from the
Yeah.
hotels, from the side trips, from everything. And, we've all booked trips. And if you're traveling with family and friends, etc., it can be it could take quite a lot of time to really get consensus on everything, to share different
Yeah.
options, to have different itineraries. So I think that's an emerging thing, just very specialized with the travel and leisure customers that we have.
Yeah, yeah. So that pluggable AI ecosystem is basically like, it's pluggable AI. Keep your particular, LLM that you
Yeah,
want. You've taken time to research and, like, go. We're not going to tell you to change that.
yeah,
However, we've got the connectors,
yeah, yeah.
and
Well, exactly, exactly. And I think that's the main philosophy that we've been rolling on is the fact that they are companies, they've got their own governance models with AI,
yeah,
and it will smooth out the process a whole lot if we just plug into what systems have not only been certified, but then also what systems are also reaching into content that doesn't exist within Tridion. Every company's got a a shared drive or something with Word documentation, a whole mess of content,
yeah.
and all of that at some point needs to go into the AI system to get interpreted alongside with
Yeah.
the Tridion content.
And then
So
that's like, closing the circle. If we go back to that EU AI Act, everything that you do with AI, once you start implementing it, part of it is that it's got to be documented,
yeah,
it's got to be traceable. And so, well, why not put it into a system
Mhm.
that has all of that built in. You know, create you that documentation in Tridion Docs.
Yeah.
You can the life expiry. You can, like, you know, reuse content. You know when what's been done, and you've got that full traceability without having to think which version of the Word document applied to version X of like this. And
It's so true. You know, it's always such a struggle. You know, and especially if something goes wrong, right? If you get a call from the lawyers who are saying,
oh yeah,
"Man, I need to know what we had published at that particular time."
click,
Yeah. Yeah.
boom,
Well.
there's your document history.
Yeah. Totally.
You know.
Excellent. Well, I think we're at time here.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for next month's live stream. We'll have a couple of more topics for you there as well. Next month on the Wednesday, so the first Wednesday of the month, I'm also going to be doing something on LinkedIn Live, and this is going to be about 15 great things about your travel websites and 3 things which are terrible. So it should be a it should be a fun one. So don't forget to follow us not only here on YouTube, but also go to our page on LinkedIn and follow us there as well. So
Yeah,
I guess that's a wrap. Well, thank you so much, Deepo.
that's a wrap.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
All
I'll
right.
see y'all
Take care,
next month.
everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.